In this lesson, we will be covering the easy-rated Hackerrank algorithm divisible sum pairs. So what do we have here? This algorithm gives you an n, a k, and an r. R is an array. It is a list of items. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. K is our divisor, and n is simply the length of this array. So here we have 6 numbers, and n will be equal to 6. So this question is asking what pairs in this array add up to a number that is divisible by k. So here we have 1 and 4, which of course is equal to 5, 2 and 3, which of course is equal to 5, and 4 and 6, which is equal to 10, which is of course divisible by 5. So let's head over to Replit and start working on this code. I've copied over the n, the k, and the r, and we'll be working with that. Okay, so how would we want to solve this problem? Likely, you would want to loop through our array and then do a subsequent loop, adding the number from the first loop with the number from the second loop to see if that is divisible by 5. So on loop 1, we'll be selecting the first index value of this array, which is 1. We'll then add this guy, 2 to 1, and check to see if it's divisible by 5. Next loop, in that second loop, we'll add 3 to 1 and see if 3 plus 1 is divisible by 5. Of course, until we get to the end of the array. And if the number is divisible by 5, the sum of those two numbers, we'll want to add it to some kind of tracker of our total. So let's start with that. Let's make a variable called total and set it equal to 0. As we find viable sums that are divisible by 5, we'll add to this total. Our total will keep track of what we're doing. And of course, I mentioned that we would like to first loop through our array. So what would the first loop look like? This is one way it could look. For I in range 0 to n. So what did I just write? For I in range 0 to n. Let's check what those values would be. We're going to print, let's do an f string, I equals, and then we will I. Okay. Now in our console, what do we get? Get I equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's perfect because the index value of the first item in our list, of course, is 0. Now it can get kind of confusing on this array itself because the index value of 0 is equal to 1, index value of 1 is equal to 2, index value of 2 is equal to 3, etc. But just to show you a little bit more clearly what's going on, let's make the index value of 0 equal to 19. So here our I will stay the same, which is perfect. But what happens when we print the value? Let's do R of I equals, R of I. Okay, let's run this. So when the I equals 0, the index value in our array is 19. So here, index value is 0. The value at that index is 19. Okay, so great. We are looping through our array. Let's set this back to 1. And let's remove these two prints. Hopefully you're following at this point. So what would we want to do? So, like I said, we want to loop through our array, and then we want to do a subsequent loop and add the values from each of our loops and check to see if they're divisible by 5. So we would want another loop. And of course, we're going to want to start at some value and keep track of that. So let me show you one way we could do that. So here in this loop, we'll be starting with j. And what would we want j to be? Well, we want it to be the next number in our array. So a way we could write that is up here we could do j is equal to I plus 1. And because we've set our range to that number, that's where our loop is going to start. So let's, again, go to print to show what we've done. Let's print j is equal to j. And then beneath that, we'll print the value. And this is where it's going to get confusing again because of the nature of our array that we're working with. But I'll again do 19 to make it a little bit more clear for everyone watching. Okay. That looks okay. All right, so let's print that and see what happens. What did I do wrong? Print f string. Oh, I see. That should do it. Okay. So now this looks kind of funky, and I will put 19 again to make things a little bit more clear. Oh, actually, let's make it 29. That's actually the key here. Okay, great. So we know that in our first loop, in the first iteration of our first loop, the value is equal to 1. And this is showing that on the first iteration of our second loop, the value in our array will be 29. And why is that? So the index value in our first loop is 0. I is equal to 0. In our second loop, we're going to start with j, and j is equal to I plus 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1, and the position of 1 in our array is right here. It's equal to 29. Okay, so I hope you're following that. And what do we want now? We want to add I plus j and see if it's divisible by 5. So let's write that out. If array of I plus array j, and let's put those in parentheses because we're going to want to add those first, and then we'll divide by k. And if that is equal to 0, what could we do? Just to show what we're working with, let's define a new array and set it to an empty array. And we will first append the new array dot append AR of I. So again, on this first loop, what is the AR of I? We're starting at 0, so I is equal to 0. So AR at index I is equal to 1. So that's going to be appended to our array. And what could we do next to show an example of a successful pair? If that first number plus the second number modulo k is equal to 0, which means it's evenly divisible, let's take our new array and we're going to append that value from the second loop, which is array j. And we will print new array. Let's see what that is. Okay, so interesting result, because I forgot to change the 9. And it also plucked a third number, which I'll have to investigate. But so let's set this back to 2. And we'll run those numbers. And here you can see those same 3 pairs from the example that's given by Hackerrank. Okay, great. So we know that we've got a successful algorithm. But we're not returning what we want. The question says to return the number of pairs. So what do we have here? We have 3 pairs. So instead of printing new array every time we get a successful array, let's do total plus equals 1. And then let's print total. We're no longer working, we can leave the arrays for now. So there you have it. On the loop that we find a successful array, total is added to 1, and then we print that. After that loop, that total is still stored. It's exterior of the loop, so it's not going to change every time we loop through. It's only going to change when we loop through the first loop through the second loop, and find a condition that satisfies this if statement. It will then adjust the total, and then we'll print it. And that's it. That's your answer, really. So we will remove the print statement, and we will instead return total, without any typos, of course. And we can actually now go ahead and get rid of our array. We're not using the array anymore. The array was just to show you guys what was happening underneath it all. We will then get rid of that. And we have this nice, simple code that we will go ahead and copy and paste over into Hackerrank. Let's print it at a good indent and fix everything up. Okay, and let's run that. Great, so it works in our sample. And now let's submit it and test it against all the tests they have set up for us. And awesome, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to drop them below. If you want to challenge me, I'd love that. I'd love to learn a little bit. And of course, hit the hit the like button and hit subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next one.